Hello class. In this video we are going to be taking a look at the first exercise, which is called creating basic shapes. Okay, so I have the 428 modules open right now because I want you to open up the instructions for creating a basic shape, and that is in the week 2 area. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and download it. All right, and give it a minute. Okay, so I clicked on the name to download it, and then here it is. Okay, now we're going to use these instructions to help to do the exercise. And so what I suggest to you is that we hit the restore down button. That's the one to the left of the X button, and we're going to make it so that it takes up about half of the screen. Okay, so you just hit the restore down button, and then you can just drag it to where you want it. Okay, and then sorry. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up Adobe Illustrator, so you can go to the start menu to do that and bring it so that it's side by side. Okay, so we're going to create a new document. Okay, so we can hit create new, or we can go file new, or we can do Control N. That's up to you. Okay, so this is going to be an 8.5 by 11 inch document. We want to work in inches. We're going to work in portrait orientation. Number of artboards is 1. You want to make sure you're in CMYK. Okay, yours may not be expanded like that, but you can expand it and choose CMYK, and then you can hit create. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we want to have these side by side so that we can follow the instructions while we're working, and so you'll want to do the same thing that I've done. The other choice you have is you could just go ahead and print out the instructions and just have them on your desk. That's up to you. Okay, now you can see I have a few of the tools open. I've got the pen tools open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Essentials Classic, reset Essentials Classic, because I kind of like to just start fresh. And then this area where it says properties, I'm just going to click that double arrow just to, kind of close it. Okay, so we want to start by doing File, Save As, and this is going to be our first exercise. It's our first exercise. Okay, so you want to put it into your Chafee Fall 20, and you want to put it into your exercises folder. Okay, and so we're going to name it with last name, first initial, and creating basic shapes. Okay. Okay, for right now we're going to save it as an AI file, and later before you turn it in you'll make it a PDF. Okay, in the options that open up, just hit OK, no changes. Okay, all right, so we're working with basic shapes. Okay, so our basic shapes, if you look at the left side of the toolbar, you'll see there's a rectangle tool, shortcut M, and we also have rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, and star tool. Okay, we're going to be using these shapes a lot today, so I'm just going to go ahead and make a tear off. Okay, so if you remember, we hover over the button or the little triangle at the bottom right of our tools, and then we just go ahead and slide to the end, and then we release, and we have a tear off. Okay, all right, so we're going to be using those shape tools a lot today, so making a tear off is a good idea. Okay, all right, so we're going to talk about the 3 ways that you can create your shapes. Okay, so if you look at your instructions, we're down to this area right here. So the first way you can do it, I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipse tool, shortcut L. The first thing you can do is just pick up the ellipse tool and just click and drag. Okay, now as I do, notice it tells me my width and my height. So I could try dragging the mouse until I get the exact numbers that I desire. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. You can do the same thing with your rectangle tool, and you can do the same thing with your star tool. It's just a matter of picking up the tool and clicking and dragging. Okay, so there is the first way. just click and drag. Okay, now, is it the best way? Well, it depends. Maybe it is for what you're doing. You want to see it as you do it, but there's some other ways we can do it too. All right, so let's start with the ellipse tool again. And there's a modifier key that we can hold down, and it's called Shift. And as I draw, it keeps it so that it's a perfect circle. You see that? So if I want to have a perfect circle, I hold Shift. So Shift constraints. Same thing for my rectangle tool. If I hold Shift, I can click and drag. Oh, got a little too close to that one, didn't I? Okay, so with the rectangle tool, I can hold Shift and click and drag and create a perfect square. And with the star tool, when I hold Shift, you'll notice that the 2 points at the bottom are level. Okay? Notice that above, when I didn't hold Shift, it kind of did whatever it wanted to do. Okay? So Shift constraints. Okay, the last way that we can create our shapes is by telling the Illustrator program exactly the size that we want. So I'm going to pick up the star tool, and I'm going to go ahead and just simply click on the screen, and you'll see a dialog box opens, okay? And so you can tell it the exact measurement that you want for your radius 1, radius 2, and your points, okay? So if you like that, then you can do that, and it will create that for you. Typically, if you don't change anything, it's probably going to do exactly what you had before. Okay. All right. So there's your 3 ways of creating basic shapes. Now let's talk about selecting objects. There's 3 selection tools, and we're going to be dealing with the first, which is the selection tool, and the shortcut for that is V. The selection tool is used to select and transform whole objects, okay? So we pick up the selection tool, or you can hit the shortcut for it, and then you simply click on whatever it is that you want to transform, okay? So with the selection tool, I can scale objects, and you'll see the whole thing gets bigger, doesn't it, when I do that? And if I want to constrain it, I hold Shift. Okay. The other thing that I can do is I can rotate objects. Okay. So if I come over here next to the star, I look for the double arrow right there, and I can click and drag and rotate. I can even hold Shift to help kind of constrain it. It'll move in a certain degrees till you get exactly what you want. Okay. So we can scale, we can rotate, and we can do other things as well. We can add, fills to it. We can transform the scale of the fill. We can rotate the fill. We can do all sorts of stuff. Okay. With the selection tool, you're selecting the whole object. Okay, so there's another tool I want you to know about, and it's called the Direct Select tool. That's the white arrow, and the shortcut is A. Direct Select is used to select individual anchor points or segments. Okay, so let's look what this star is made up of. If we look at this star, you can see that it's made up of anchor points. You see that? And it's made up of segments. Okay, so if I say that it's used to select individual anchor points or segments, you can see that if I click and drag on an anchor point, it moves that anchor point and the segments that are connected to it. Okay. Now you can select the whole object, but the Direct Select tool is not the best choice to use when selecting the whole object, okay? Because you can't rotate it. You can't scale the whole object with the Direct Select. It's really meant to select individual points or segments. I could select a segment and I can backspace and get rid of it, okay? So Direct Select is for that purpose, okay? If I go to resize my square and I drag a point, it just resizes that one point and the segments attached to it, right? Okay, so if you want to scale, use the selection tool. If you want to edit individual anchor points or segments, use Direct Select. Okay, now the last tool I want you to know about is the Group Selection tool. Okay, And the purpose of the group selection tool is to select individual items in a group. So what I did just now is I grouped these objects, and you'll learn about that later. But what I want you to see is that when you have grouped objects and you pick up the selection tool and you click, it selects all the objects. Well, what if I just want to color this one star? And every time I go to select it, it selects everything. That makes it hard, because if I try to color it, it's going to color all of them, isn't it? Okay, so what do? Well, we have a wonderful tool called the group selection tool. So if I come over here and I pick it up, it's the white arrow with the plus sign. There is no shortcut for group selection. Okay, but the cool thing about this one is I can select an individual object within a group, and I can do things like color it. Now, if I want to transform it, I can group select it, switch to my selection tool, and then I can do my transformations, okay? So group selection selects the one item in a group, but then you can, if you need to transform, you can switch to the selection tool, okay? Now, selecting just means you make something active. So if I want to make this object active so I can put color in it, then I select it, okay? And if I want to do something else, I can make it so that it's no longer active by deselecting or clicking away, okay? It's best, though, when let's say that you are drawing an ellipse and you're done with it and you want to deselect, you don't want to just click away while you have the ellipse tool, because guess what? The computer thinks you want to start another ellipse. So if you decide to deselect, pick up the selection tool and click away, and now you've deselected it, okay? So always deselect with one of the selection tools, okay? All right, let's talk about coloring objects. Okay, so to color an object, it has to be active, okay? So that means we get a selection tool and we click on it. Now it's active. Okay, so we're going to learn about 3 different things. Right now we're going to learn about the swatches panel, we're going to learn about the color panel, and we're going to learn about the color picker. Okay, now over on the left side of the screen we have our fill and stroke. Okay, so if you remember, I said that if you want to change the fill has to be forward or on top, right? And the shortcut for switching back and forth between the fill or the stroke being active is X, okay? Or you can just come on over here and click on it. So it's kind of whatever is easiest for you. Okay, so let's talk about color. Okay, so here's our color panel, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it out from that tab, and I'm going to expand it. Okay, so I pulled the color panel out and I expanded it. Okay, so you can see I had told you that in Illustrator we work in CMYK, so you can see CMYK. So this is really cool because you can actually, tell the computer exactly what color you want by percentage. The other thing you can do is down here in the CMYK spectrum, you can pick the general color that you want, and then you can adjust the sliders until you get the perfect color. If I want to change the stroke, I can hit X, or I can click to bring the stroke forward, and then I can choose a color for my stroke. So maybe I want kind of a pink. And if I want to make it larger up here in the stroke panel, I can choose from the drop down and pick a larger stroke if I want to. Okay, so that's how you do the fill and stroke in the color panel. Now let's talk about doing the fill and stroke in the swatches panel. Here's the swatches panel. It looks like a series of little squares. I'm going to go ahead and grab it by the tab and pull it out. And if I drag at the bottom here, you can see all the colors. Now these are the default colors that come with Essentials Classic, and typically they're for print. So you can pick a color from in here, or you could go into the swatch library and choose some colors within there. You can also choose a pattern if you wanted, but we're going to stick with colors for now. Okay, so again, we make the object active by selecting it with the selection tool. I can hit X to bring the fill forward, and I can pick a color, and it tells me exactly what the red, green, and blue is here. Okay, and then I can bring the stroke forward and I can pick a color for the stroke. Okay, so that's our swatches panel. In the swatches panel, you are choosing colors that are already mixed together for you. In the color panel, you can mix your own. Okay, and then the last one that I want to show you is the color picker. So I'm going to go ahead and hit X so that the fill is forward. And the color picker you can access by double clicking on the fill square. And so then you can come into this spectrum and you can pick a color, and then you can go in and pick the exact color that you want. Now if you want a tint, you can come up here to this corner. That means that white has been added. If you want a shade, you can come down to this bottom corner and pick it. And when we say shade, that means black is added. Or you can go somewhere in the middle for the most pure of the color variation. So let's do that one more time. Color picker, we just simply bring the fill forward, double click. We go into the spectrum and pick our color. Then we come on over here and we pick the exact color. Now I want you to notice that it tells me in CMYK exactly what the percentage is of each of the colors. Okay, and also notice there's a code right here. Do you see where it says number and there's a code? Once you mix a color, keep track of that code because you can use it again to get the exact same color. Okay, so those are 3 ways in which you can fill your objects with color. Okay, and so I think we're in good shape as far as the basic information you need to know. We need to know that our basic shape tools are here and we can make a tear off. We can use our selection tools to edit. So regular selection tool, shortcut V, edit or transform whole objects. Direct select, shortcut A, select and alter individual anchor points or segments. And then group selection is where we can select a single object within a group. Okay, our 3 ways of coloring that we learned about today: the color panel, the swatches panel, or the color picker. Okay, all right, so this concludes part 1, and in part 2 we're going to go ahead and start the exercise.